Hey friends, it's me, Erin. Welcome to the next episode of the If You Could See Me podcast. This is part 2 of my conversations with Devin Walker, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much. Last time we talked about a whole lot of things, but the one thing that we really didn't spend a lot of time focusing on was, the really specific issues of mental health. And I think part of that was because, that was the longest, one-on-one conversation you and I have ever had. And I think that a lot of this stuff is really personal. And so it's hard to just sort of delve in. So I really appreciated the opportunity to kind of get to know you and understand you a little bit better about where you came from. And I'm really appreciative of your willingness to open up on, some deeper aspects of your life and your personal life and your emotional life. And so thank you for coming back.
Yep. My pleasure.
Are you hearing me okay?
I am. Okay. Perfect.
If I cut out at any point, just cut me off.
Okay.
And we'll figure it out. But it seems, knock on wood.
Yeah, seems good.
Knocking on my head. Moment. So, I've been thinking a lot about how to talk to many different people about these subjects, but the thing that strikes me, someone like you, and I don't want to put you in a box, but you are a successful businessman, you are well respected, you are, go all over the place, and it's almost like it's more important for a person like you to be candid about, the struggles that human beings face in life, because it's really easy for a person who's feeling very isolated and alone, like their world, to feel like they're the only person who struggles in this way, and to look at you and all the amazing things that you do and say, this is not a person who has any kind of internal or emotional, health issues. And so I'd really just like to jump in there and have you start with what comes up for you in that comment.
You touched on a couple of interesting aspects. One of them this reminds me of a time, about 3 years ago. I did a lot of public speaking. I've been doing a lot of public speaking for about a decade now. And this wasn't something I had ever thought of before. It wasn't something I thought of on the way to this engagement. It completely happened at the spur of the moment type of a deal, where after my introduction, I always kind of give a little quick self-introduction, kind of a law of the land type of thing, and for out of nowhere, I said to the audience, about 400 people, I said, today, nothing is off the table. Anything you want to ask me, ask. And I went on to say, I said, because the things that happen and have happened and how I deal with those things in my personal life contribute directly to who I am in my professional life. And ever since that night, I've made that part of my introduction. Astonishingly, I would say of all the questions that come in my Q&As afterwards, and I mean, I give Q&As for an hour to 3 hours sometimes.
Wow.
90% of them are about my personal life.
Right.
If you think about the entrepreneurs, or the people I'm speaking to, that's what they want to hear about. The real things. They want to hear about what they're going through,
right.
The things that are making them, giving them challenges, and they can read about ROI or funding or hiring or leadership in a million different places. But having somebody that they look up to or respect or have some knowledge that they want to, they're looking to gain, open up that way to them, I think is very rare. I think even some of their successful friends and mentors don't even always allow that kind of access. So it's amazing. They want to hear about how I went back to work after my son died. They want to hear about, what morning you every morning after you went through this, or how do I handle my family when they're wanting me to do this and do that? That's what they want to know. And I think it's the most important. I don't know about the most important, but it's equally important now. After having done that for about 5 years now, three to 5 years that I've been allowing that to happen in my Q&As. I can't imagine not offering my audiences that.
I mean, it really is a great service, but it's also, it's something that people in positions of leadership and power historically have avoided, because they, somehow we are supposed to think that a person is just sort of universally ordained for their success, and that everything is easy for them, or they're somehow, elevated above, the average person. And I think that we live right now in this wonderful moment of self-disclosure, of, people finally, sort of making good on see me if you could see me idea, which is, no human being is born on this earth knowing what the hell they're doing. We all have to figure it out. We all have to show up every day. And when you get the idea that you're somehow, different or more than or less than, then those are the things that separate us on a universal level. So, I just think that it is the most essential thing, especially once again for people in your position who are, who people will look at and say, well, he's got, this positive thing, or he got this leg up, or he doesn't clearly struggle like I struggle, so I'd like you to start by talking about, the pain of losing a child, and how that, how that impacts you, and how you talk to people about that, and, how you use all of the extremely painful, challenging, difficult elements of your life to, to bolster your fortitude and to, keep going.
Sure. I want to back up though a little bit. You touched on something about perception that people have. It's something I think about fairly often, especially we just lost a close friend, a dear friend of 25 years, Chester Bennington from Lincoln Park, who I met 25 years ago now, I think it's been. And then he's been involved with Sean and Thor and Club Tattoo for the past 22 years. I see a lot, I've heard a lot of people say, not just in his case either, but also in my case, a lot of people say, oh, if I had your money, everything would be fine, and, but that's not the case. I saw so many things after Chester passed, where people said, oh, he was famous, he going on this stuff going on, he had all this money, he didn't have any reason.
Right.
And it's amazing to say that. And, you hear a lot of people say, oh, poor little rich boy, but money doesn't change your struggles. I don't know how to say it, more money, more problems,
Well, But there's no guarantee that a person who struggles with any kind of acute mental illness or mental health challenge, that having $1 billion is going to make them any less diagnosed.
That's right.
Diagnosed. That I mean, you can have zero anything and be perfectly healthy. It's I mean, money doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the diagnosis.
Right. A lot of people think that, if I have $1 million, I'll be 1,000,000 times happier than I am now.
Right.
If I have 2 million, I'll be 2,000,000 times happier, and so on and so on. But that's just not the way it works. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are caught up in this "if then" mentality. And if I had a perfect job, if I had a perfect job, if I had a perfect job, if I had the trophy husband or trophy wife, my relationship would be great. If but it all comes from inside of you. Start that, and that is just, it's human place. In fact, our human place. In fact, almost statistics. So I hope statistics. So take as written in stone, but I think that's probably the most successful people in history have also difficult challenges.
Yes.
I think that it has been driving force behind them succeeding is that they have faced these types of obstacles in their life,
right.
And it may became into who they became. Mm-hmm. I think without those, now don't get me wrong. A friend told me one time, the price of wisdom is pain.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people think, or that I see that I give them wise advice, but I can't speak for anybody that we all consider to be wise, Martin Luther King, John Lennon, Mahatma Gandhi, whoever it is. Mm-hmm. But I have a funny feeling if they were anything like me and they had gone through, which we know those celebrated wise men have gone through a lot, that we would give anything to be naive.
Right.
I would give
a question.
I can guarantee that Martin Luther King would give anything to have no idea what it's even like to live in a country where there's racism and segregation. Right. He wishes he had never heard of such a thing. I would never knew or gain the person what it's like to put my ground. But unfortunately, those are the challenges that come across, and you have to just kind of, you gain a wisdom and a perspective because of that. Become the fuel for your fire a lot of times. Nope. Not saying that successful don't have successful guarantee as well. They do. They do. And I don't have the formula for how to take that and use it to your advantage or to propel you. That being able to have that perspective and fortitude and motivation starts inside.
I totally agree with that. I think about this probably more than trying to figure out, like you said, what is the formula? What makes sense? How did I go from a person who, was quite fundamentally very negative and, looked at my life when I was younger as, a victim of circumstance, and I blamed, other people, and I didn't want to take responsibility for myself and my where I wanted to be. Then, becoming over time and growth and maturity and, medication and mental health interventions, a person who understood things on a deeper level, becoming someone who I can't control, stands that I can't control other people, and I can only control the way that I look at the world. And, that decided that I was going to, make my story into something that that I felt like I grew out of, whereas I grew up feeling, fairly ashamed of who I was and where I came from, and not having the kind of foundation that I ultimately would have hoped for in many ways. But and you don't, and it's don't want to be prescriptive. Don't want to be prescriptive. Maybe you can speak to and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, because you can't look at someone who's struggling and say, if only you would,
right,
1, 2, 3, then your life would be better, because only a person can come to that knowledge on themselves.
That's correct. That is correct.
In this sort of world, that, I guess they call self-help. For me, it's really a huge challenge, because, I am just sort of taking people along on my journey. I have a mother who has bipolar disorder, and conversations with her, and when I just, I'm almost begging her to just get out of her own head, and she can't. And it's not for lack of wanting to, it's not for lack of trying, it's not for lack of, she just can't seem to do it. And no amount of my pep talking her helps her to get that self-revelation that says, this isn't working for me. So,
when it comes to pretty much everything, I was thinking about this, what we're talking about, but also success. When I talk to people about success, well, it is a type of being able to live, function, and continue on regardless of whatever it is, obstacle wise, that you face. And it's one of the things I say also. I say speeches also. Say that there is no formula. I can't tell you how to succeed, whatever that is. If it's success with your mental health or business relationship or business, but I can do what I've done,
right?
And then they can do what information you want with that information, because I can't. There is no you will succeed if you do steps 1 through 4. That doesn't happen. Like I told you before, I have a library in my house, and everybody has their own formula for success, or for, if whatever else I say formula. There's thousands of books about, but really you have to take that information and make it your own.
So before you came to, be this successful person that you are, with, who's gained all of this wisdom, was there ever a time when, you went through something that was, that almost like leveled you, that you really had to, walk the walk? Or did you get to this point from those experiences? Or, when we talked last time, you talked a lot about, your experience with meditation and having been raised a Buddhist. And I think that in many ways that is a wonderful way to sort of teach mindfulness and teach management and teach, non-attachment and all of those things. And, I think we'd all be better off if that was kind of the foundation that we were given. But there had to have been a point in your life where things were just too much. There had to have been that real vulnerable place.
My knee-jerk reaction to that is every day, even to this day is like that.
Right.
There were some moments, many, whether it was the Gulf War, whether it was my son passing, my mother passing. I had a fiance that I lost. My best friend was killed while we were on a bicycle ride, and hit by a drunk driver while we were riding our bicycles. There's many, I remember had a fiance that passed, and I had an actual. I used to watch people on TV say, "Oh, I had a nervous breakdown. I couldn't, And I thought, come on, you can be in control. You can get up and eat. You can do." And then when it happened,
Right.
you can't. I couldn't get off my floor. My mother and grandmother had to fly out to where I was to feed me, and it blows my mind now to even think about that. So yeah, and I'm somebody that has a huge heart. It's broken. It gets broken. It's massive to me, and I feel like whenever something happens, it kind of brings back everything that has ever happened to a certain degree. And I live with those losses every single day. I think about all of those people all the time. There's always a challenge. And the thing is, and even if you are Buddhist, and even the Dalai Lama has said it, the foundation is non-attachment, because nothing is permanent. Everything will end at one point. Universes will end. The universe will end. The galaxies will end. Stars will end. Your day at the amusement park will end. Your brand new car one day will be gone. On and on and on. Letting go is the single most difficult thing humans will ever do. It's the hardest thing, and the hardest thing, and it causes the most suffering. And that's why it's so important to be able to practice non-attachment. Is because root of all suffering, at some point, there's something that you're attached to. That when you have any kind of suffering, it's because you're missing something, or there's something that you are wanting, and that's where attachment comes from. So it's very, very, very difficult, and I wrestle with it daily.
So two questions come up, and I'm not really sure which one to ask you first, but I'm going to ask you the more personal one, and then I'm going to come back to my second question. How does that amount of significant loss impact your ability to build relationships and get close to people moving forward?
I'm an armchair psychiatrist at best.
From your personal experience, asking you to, not asking you to,
Yeah, people say that I'm very approachable.
That's true. I would agree with that.
I can tell you personally that I am afraid to let anyone genuinely close, because if I look at the history and the track record, I'm going to lose them.
Right.
So inevitable in my head. It's a long process. My most recent romantic relationship didn't happen fast enough for her. For me, I thought for us, but for me, I was building a foundation. For me, I felt that it was. I didn't want. I wasn't purposely saying, "Oh, let's go slow." I wasn't doing that, but I was saying, "Let's be very organic about this. Let's let things happen naturally." I even said that. I remember saying, "The best things in the universe happen naturally. Let's not force anything." But look, in hindsight now, I realize that if she genuinely had those feelings right away, because some things in the universe, stars are born sometimes, that quickly. Mm-hmm. So I guess there's a level of self 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 protecting myself. Um, but there's also a level of pushing them away because I don't want to deal with the loss again.
Right. So
go ahead. Well, go ahead.
no, do you have more to say?
Yeah, I would say that friendships, business relationships. I love I tend to be observer and cautious, and I think what's happening is I'm letting myself see that they are going to be here for a while.
Right. Interesting. So thank you for being so honest. I know that for myself, in my experiences in my life and in my relationships, I tend to be a person who is more comfortable giving than receiving. I don't like to, I don't like to need help. I don't like to be the one receiving the whatever it is, the gift or the outreach, or I like to be the friend that shows up with the meal. I like to be the person who goes into the community and does the thing. And I worked with a coach a couple of years ago who pointed out to me that I did that. And she asked me why. And, I basically said, because I want to control every situation so that I don't get hurt and so that I know exactly what to expect. And because it's not that I don't trust people, the individual person, it's that I don't trust people, and I don't often trust the universe to deliver in a way that I can understand, because I am attached, much to my chagrin. And so I'm curious to know if you find you're doing similar things to sort of engineer, but still maintaining control over the situation.
Absolutely. I mean, as you know how involved I am, altruistic. It's a way for me to have connection and to give love, and maybe I'm receiving some love at that during those times. It's not my motivation in doing it, but it probably, I guess, feel like a connection when that happens, and then I get to retreat. Then I get to back walls, back behind the gates. I am very eccentric. I am very, isolated to some point. Where I'm not a public figure, but I am out in the public,
right,
when I want to be.
Right.
I'm actually year or 2 years learning, or I don't know if I'm learning, but I'm becoming more selective about my appearances, for lack of a better word.
Right. Why is that?
A lot of it is probably because, and I don't mean that them as the person, like you were saying, but they're gonna hurt me.
Right.
And maybe I'm wrong. I probably am wrong. Most of the people in my life would tell me, no, we're not.
Right.
And I know they're not. But the laws of my history and track record mean they are going to hurt me. They're going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want that to happen. So I feel like kind of that out of sight, out of mind kind of a
right. If I can control this to, get what I need to, but never go too deep into then any one thing, then it serves. I've maintained control over the situation.
I've also learned that, putting myself out there too much, and I don't know if I should have said too much, but putting myself out there also makes me vulnerable, and it makes me a target. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of believe that they need to, that they're entitled of your life, and intimate details, and it's a way for them to kind of classify you or put you where they need to, and I don't operate like that, and those people are very toxic.
Yes.
And so I've removed myself from that type of exposure, or exposing myself to that kind of a person. There's a lot out there. There are a lot of people out there that are like that, whether they think that they're going to somehow benefit, or whether they think that, direct benefit, or they think that by, because if you are eccentric, genuinely eccentric, mm-hmm. if you are honest and authentic, and you don't give everybody every bit of information about your life and every intimate detail, then you leave gaps. And when you leave gaps, there are people out there that like to fill them in. Mm-hmm. And usually, and always, they're not filling them in accurately. Right. So I have been, I don't want to use the word victim, but I have been the target of such a gossip, I guess.
Well, we just live in a world that, where everyone has opinions about people they don't know, and they make assessments about, who the other person is based on the limited amount of information that they have. And, when you choose to be in the world in the way that you are, and though I am on a that, it's like when you do a play and you get a good review and you're happy about the good review, and then you get a bad review and you're mad about it. And the rule of thumb is that if you you also have to accept the criticism. Right. And so either you choose not to read it and just remove yourself from it, or you somehow figure out how to make peace with the fact that some of it's going to be good and some of it's going to be bad, or live in absolute and total misery and let everything get to you. And that is definitely something that I have had to learn when I started sharing all myself, these bits of myself, and writing a lot, and as has sort of grown, there are some people who don't get it and who it makes very uncomfortable, and they have to assume that I have some kind of incendiary motivations, or that I'm doing it for the wrong reason, or I'm trying to whatever, and but that's their stuff.
Yeah, it is their stuff. And I'm not in any way comparing myself to this person, but I'm only using this as an example because it's something that everybody knows.
Right.
So, but privately, I recognize this, and this is a big motivator into. I guess is the dark places that I wrestle with, is that Michael Jackson was very much a genuine eccentric. Right. And a lot of people, eccentric is a noun. Eccentric is a noun. It is not an adjective. It is, we are genuinely that way. And the world loved his music. The world loved and laughed at this outfit or this movie or whatever, everything he did. So, but they also, in the end, killed him. They couldn't wait to bring him down. And I get the same thing. Oh, I love when you go to the hospital. I love when you do this. Oh, I love the orphanage. But at the same time, and I know I'm painting with broad strokes. I'm not saying every single person.
Right.
But as a society, they can't wait
to tear you down.
That's right. The same people that attended your coronation are the same ones that yell and cheer execution.
Nope, that's very true. So I guess the question is, when we talk about this, when we talk about, these are, the real life struggles of people every day. How do we as human beings, manage through the disappointment and the misinterpretation and the, how do you get of that? How the other side of that? How does that not destroy you? You, Devin, as an individual person, what do you do to sort of turn that around? How do you get out of bed every day?
Oh, I don't know. For me, I like I said earlier, I can just speak to what I've done or what I do. Having lost so many people is a big motivator to me, because to me, I get to be here. Any day above ground's a good day to me. So I get to be here. I get to do things. I get to do. I had I was in a relationship. Several. She woke up and said, "Do you have any idea, Devin, that the second your eyes open every single day, you're like SpongeBob SquarePants?" Because, and I don't drink coffee. I don't drink alcohol. I don't know what I would do if I had any of those. But she was right. I wake up and I'm like, okay, I've got 24 hours now. What am I going to do? And I kind of go. And not to say I don't struggle. I do struggle. I've been in some very dark places. It wasn't that long ago. I made sure the rafters in my basement would be able to hold my weight. That was not long ago. And I can't say that that's not going to come again. I hope it doesn't. But that makes me want to something that I want to address, is that a lot of people have to get out of their minds or their perception that depression is sadness,
right?
Or just lots of sadness. It's not. It comes something that comes, and it's unlike any sadness. It's not even sadness times 100 or 1,000. It's a different thing. It's a completely different thing. So, I take each moment as it comes, honestly. So I'm not really saying, okay, here we go today. I'm going to get through today by doing this. I get through each moment. I think which I do is which is very Buddhist. I live in the moment. I have this moment now. And after we hang up, who knows what might come. Hopefully it won't be something dark. But I'm not there. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Right.
Right.
So I don't have a formula. I just do it and I do it by the moment. I can say that, the thing, I love being outdoors. I love nature. I love people. I love the people around me. I meditate. I don't do any kind of, I don't do drugs. I don't do any of the things that I think my head might cause more depression or more stress or more whatever. I don't gamble, and I'm not saying all of this stuff because I'm trying to be preachy or I think, whatever. It's just not for me.
Right.
It just is not for me. I have nothing against alcohol. at all. In fact, I kind of wish everybody was drunk. I'd be a fox in a hen house. I have nothing against it. It just isn't for me.
Right.
And I decided that that wasn't for me, and that I couldn't be the best me and the most effective and not miss opportunities ever. So I needed to be clear-minded. And it makes sense for me. So when I say it's not for me, it's because it makes sense. And I do a lot of assessment. I do a lot of, even if it's on the fly, quick millisecond, okay, is this the right thing to do? I do run down lists in my head of, okay, not because of some moral thing or because of whatever, society or whatever, but because of me.
That's just what you do.
Right.
So let me ask you, did you always do that, or is that something you learned?
Yeah, I have always done it. You only get to do this once.
Right.
It's not a dress rehearsal. And for me, I make the rules. I make the rules. And I don't mean you make the rules for you, or, your listeners are going to make the rules for them. Mm-hmm. But I know what works for me. And I'm a big picture. I'd like to understand what the big picture is. One day I actually sat down. I sat at my kitchen table, had a yellow legal pad that pretty much is always present. And I said, what do I know? What do I know in life? What do I know in this existence? And I said, business. I know business. So I sat down. So I said, what if my life were a business? What if I was a business? Let's call it Devin Incorporated. And I sat down then and I thought, okay, if at that point, I've been around for 35 years and I want to be around for another 60 or so years. What do I ensure the success of that business? And I just did a lot of assessment, cleaning house, so to speak. If you had a business, a brick and mortar business or whatever, and you have people, let's call them employees in that business,
right,
who were bringing down the business, or who were bad mouthing, or you couldn't trust them with the company's secret, or the company's to the safe, whatever it is, or we're doing things that we're taking away or hurting the business. What do? You hand out pink slips,
right, and
you're very unapologetic about it. And I'm not trying to sound like a jerk, but
no, not at all.
Only get to do this, and I did that. It was many years ago, but I completely cleaned house. There were family members that got pink slips,
right?
And it wasn't like, well, one to such, going to give one because such and such because it or related, and you're also, if this was an employee who was doing those things, you wouldn't say, well, okay, I'll give you another chance, come back and work for us. You don't do that. So you should do no reason you should do that with you.
But I think that, what you're talking about, is, something we all really struggle with, and that is, finding those opportunities to get perspective on not from an emotionally reactive place, not from a judgmental place, but I think about what I started doing when, and I don't know business, bleeding heart, human services, arts, culture kind of gal. I've always worked in the nonprofit world, and I understand that business, but I understand mission-based work. And when I started doing this work, it just sort of something that I fell into because I understood stories. And so if I can write a story about someone else, I can write a story about my own life. And when I was able to step outside and all the things I thought about myself, and write the stories from the perspective of just someone seeing all the things that were happening. Very much the same way, I was able to necessarily, give pink slips because I don't have a lot of people in my really do protect because I really do protect myself in that way. But I was able to reform the way that I talk to myself, about my life, about my experiences. But I was only able to do that because of it and gave it a different role. It wasn't me anymore. It was just a person in a story. I literally changed everything. So what you're saying is get perspective, step outside, look at your life as if it's not necessarily happening to you, and what could you make different?
Perspective is everything.
Right.
And you can't force perspective to happen. But you can certainly be open to receiving perspective when it does occur.
It's so true. I always sort of go back to my relationship as, she's my mother. And I see how she struggles. She's, 25 years older than I am. And, she did when I was a child. And the big thing that I see her struggle with is the ability to get out of her own way and to step back and to look at things and give herself a little bit of perspective. And she just cannot do it. And, I believe that it's a cannot, it's not won't. It's truly that she just can't seem to get from herself to be able to see things clearly. I don't know if that's a matter of her diagnosis, or if that's a matter of, trauma, or if it's a matter of, her just not maturing at the same rate as some other common people, or things, but all of those things. But it is the thing that I see that is sort of the crux of all of the challenges that she faces. And it hurts me so deeply when I see it, because what I said, it doesn't matter what I said, just what I do, it just, she can't see it.
Yeah. Finding the ability, or even just change your perception in certain directions. That what's the best way to eat an elephant?
Right.
One bite at a time. So, right. Will change everything, and I don't know where I'm going with that, but
it's okay. No, you're absolutely right. And actually, I've said that to her, the thing about the elephant. So I guess one or two more questions, and then I'll let you go on about your day. Where do you stand on, traditional therapy, medication, all that jazz? Is that something that you take part in? Is it something that you avoid? Is it something, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, it's actually something I get asked about quite often, because a lot of people, I don't want to say they fancy themselves as experts, but a lot of people do have advice when it comes to that.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times somebody says, "Oh, you should go do this." For me, so I've had a couple of instances where I went to see a quote-unquote professional, and they were both very bad experiences. One of them, I went into her office and sat down, and she sat down behind her desk, and this was after my son had passed away. And, it was maybe a couple months later, because it was that long before I could actually get myself to be able to talk to somebody else. But she sat down behind her desk, and she pushed the Kleenex box to me and said, was handing me some Kleenexes. I was crying, and said, here you go. I know how you feel. And right then it was like, I kind of quit crying at that point. I was just like, you know what? I got up and left because you don't know how I feel.
Right.
Even if you've lost a child, even if you've lost 10 children, you don't know how I feel.
Right.
And I thought, what a horrible thing to say. Even, and I don't know anything about that lady, but that was the wrong thing to experience. First experience. Then time, family member, because I had this like church down the street from corner of the street from where I lived back then, and said you should go down. A friend said you should go down the street. Go talk to this. I guess are they preachers or priests?
Catholic church, it's a priest.
Okay, so I went down there, and it was this old Irish guy, and he kind of he said, you don't need to come in here with all that's not going to change. That's not going to. So
God.
yeah, so I left, and that one was after my fiance had passed away. Then I went, probably the most recent, which maybe was about 8-9 years ago now. I had a flashback from the war, actually the Gulf War. I actually was driving, and I remember having to pull over on the side of the road, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and then I had a second one, all within a matter of maybe 2 or 3 days, and never seen something like that. It isn't just a memory. It was very weird. And so the girl I was seeing, suggested I go talk to somebody because I was having these flashbacks. So I went to a grief counselor, and she was a friend of a friend. So there was, this is a good person, Devin. And so I thought, okay. And I must have had a dozen hours with her. But at one point, and this is, I'm not saying anything negative here. This was actually a, positive experience. She just kind of said, I don't know what more I can do for you, Devin. This is after a dozen or so visits. You don't have a drink, you don't have anger issues, you don't do drugs. You seem to be coping really, really well with everything. I'd be more happy to continue and hear and listen to you talk and to give advice. But honestly, I don't know what I can do for you. She was kind of saying, there's nothing here for me. And I thought, okay. So I quit going to that. And then I've had some medicine prescribed every now and then, but it would always make me very sick. Massive headaches. And I would maybe take it for one time and never take them ever again. So that's my experience with both of those things. And, to this day, I don't take anything. And I certainly now, a lot of times people say, well, have you talked to somebody? There's nobody. I also, being who I am and being isolated or not, but isolated, but protect. My eccentricities is being around strangers. I'm not. I have, for instance, the person that cuts my hair comes to my house to cuts my hair. Not a good crowd person. I don't like strangers to touch me. And these are peculiarities, but I think deep inside there's a reason somewhere. And like I said, I'm not qualified enough to know what that is. So I have those sorts of things that I function with.
But that is, first of all, the only reason that I ask is because, when we talk to someone who has had, specific instance, or any of those things, 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 I think that this is an important conversation to say there are lots of resources out there, and some of them, some people, and some of them other people, and some of them don't work at all. And, it's about the individual experience, and it's about, getting the help that you need. And, and at the very least, it's about asking for help when you need it.
Well, and that's what I was getting at too, was that when people and not being able to be around. I have through my history and it does much more good for me to have a friend,
right,
be a counselor. The problem with that is they're not doing it, but also that's a lot to ask of somebody.
Right.
It is a lot. I recognize that it's very difficult to ask somebody for that weight, to put that weight on them.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, a lot of times I don't get to talk to anybody, and it just, or they do it for a little while, and then think, oh, you should be better by now, since they're not trained,
Right.
So that's where I fall in with all of it. Is I can only be around people that I know and trust. The history has not been good. So for that, so I'm kind of stuck, I guess.
Well, that therapist said in a lot of ways you cope very well. You have a lot of talk. You have good, Ara has purpose in their life and goals, and there's no one that doesn't have some aspect of their existence on the planet that they struggle with or would like work on, but ultimately you are building a good life for yourself in the midst of all of those challenges. And that's kind of this process. What I'm trying to do is just to talk to all the different people and say, we're starving artists, moms and dads, and we're successful business people, and we're on the PTA, and we're recovering addicts, and there's no person on this planet who doesn't have
right.
And the more willing we are to just say out loud, today is a shitty day, or last month sucked, or, but I need help. I need medication. I personally, Erin, needs medication. I really have a hard time finding a therapist that works for me. But my meds work well, and books work well, and, listening to other people's perspective works well for me, and lots of, internal dialogue works for me. And I still struggle, and there's still some days, some weeks, some months where it's really, really hard. But the point is that, we keep showing up.
Yeah.
And when it's too hard to keep showing up, that say, all right, I need someone to pull me out of this hole. I need someone there next to me. And, none of us is perfect, but if we can say those things out loud, I think that, our world becomes a much kinder place for everyone. Because, the ground at least is semi-even when, mom's basement realizes that Devin, the successful businessman, also has, together sometimes. You're the best, my friend. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, to get so personal, to talk to me a second time so that we could make sure that our technical glitches were out of the way and that we could have this really personal conversation. Thank you so much.
I think you're the best. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.